So, why don't we do another Tsai Ming-liang? This is the movie Whole by Taiwanese director Tsai Ming-liang. We've covered Tsai's work earlier on this channel with Goodbye Dragon Inn. And yeah, I figured I'd want to check out some more stuff. This is apparently a musical, I believe, done by the director. I'm always interested in exploring musicals. And another thing to note, the music was done by Grace Chang, who is an actress we've covered previously with her Taiwanese work with Cathay Films. So yeah, that's an interesting little connection. I'd love to read up more about that, but I wanted to keep this a blind viewing and keep things fresh. So yeah, without further ado, let's watch Whole, or The Whole, or The Last Dance. It's the same. The same beginning as Joker.
这边的居民来讲是不公平的，然后让事情，你看现在事情扩大到这种地步，然后才要我们去当难民一样去住在那种什么教室啊、学校那种帐篷里面。
This is Lee Kang-sheng, a frequent collaborator, all the time collaborator with Tsai Ming-liang.
不好意思啊，您家有漏水吗？ 没有啊，你们楼下漏得很厉害，整个墙都湿了。谢谢，不好意思。
Tapping is something that I've kind of like seen in Goodbye Dragon Inn as well. Or like the repetition of sound. Bad leak. There's something that I want to see if it's like a recurring thing in Tsai's work of kind of like there's like a kind of an architectural bent to his movies that is interesting to explore, seeing like the different levels of buildings and how like one level feeds down into another, and how like issues that begin on one seep into another, like this issue of a leak or this issue of water running. Water obviously threads all throughout Goodbye Dragon Inn, which is funny given the movie that they're watching, but there's water coursing outside obviously because it's raining, but also in the bathroom stalls and through the pipes, and it's just always something that's like trickling down. And that kind of architecture just makes me think of like Taiwan and Taipei, like apartment complexes and buildings like really up close with each other, giving this kind of leveled view of the world. And again, this kind of stratification, these like levels play into the narrative of the trash as well. Her apartment's set up funny. She's like a millennial. She's brought in the TV a little bit too close to herself. It's like designed for her like individual comfort. It's not really like it's not been designed for receiving people.
今天呢，我要为您介绍第一样，就用泡面来做的好料理呢。美眉面、王子面、统一面、什么面都可以，只要是一包泡面的话就可以了。这个水呢，像我刚刚跟您提醒过的，你一定要让它煮沸之后，还要这个沸腾10分钟甚至以上。 否则里面水里面的杂质啊，或者是细菌，吃下去真的不好。
Oh no！
不要吃了半天啊，泻肚子就不好了。那么我们水起码要烧沸10分钟，在这里拉面要再三提醒你，一定要烧沸10分钟以上。好，我们把水加进去，这个水到这个分量就够了，煮沸。水煮
Where's the water coming from? Do they manage to find a leak? Water is kind of notoriously hard to capture on film. Rainwater especially. Wasn't this a song in yeah, this is a song in Air Hostess. She sang this at the party when they after she became an air hostess. It was when she went to that party with the dancer guy, right? And her boyfriend was jealous. I remember her dancing. I like that really obvious spotlight. It's such an interesting use of a theatrical convention and in the filmic space, because I don't know if the associations would be there in 1997, but definitely these days the association with like a spotlight or like a really strong lamplight or a flashlight would in like an apartment complex or a building setting would signify something like a horror movie. It'd be like a train at the end of a cop's gun. And this is again that kind of like strong architectural bent of Tsai, of like seeing how human beings interact with like inert or static objects that contain them, that surround them. I kind of get the feeling that in his experience or with his characters that human beings have an easier time interacting with buildings than they do with each other. But this is like something that, oh my god, the hole has gotten a lot bigger. Was that from that one knock from the carpenter? Yeah, so it's been his vomit that's been going down the hole. That's a real vomit. That's a real vomit. I love that. I so rarely get to see real vomit in movies, and I hate how artificial it sounds. He's really doing it. How fake it sounds in American movies, because it's just, you know, somebody spitting out something that's in their mouth. But he was really fucking throwing up. I love that. But I was going to say, in terms of the architectural thing, like, this is something that ties in with J-horror that's emerging around this time, too. Like, I think about Pulse as well, from Kiyoshi Kurosawa. The interaction that these East Asian films have with architecture, with the city, with urban planning and stuff. It seems like all these concrete buildings are making, like, these giant mausoleums, these... oh, that's gross. And there's the kind of like spotlight again, this light that wouldn't be emanating from there, casting down upon her. But the feeling of watching Pulse or like watching The Ring or something, or Ringer or something, is like watching human beings like trapped in these like fish cans or trapped inside of these concrete tombs that we've built for each other. That human beings are more nestled and more enclosed than ever in these giant buildings in China or in Taiwan or in Japan during this time, but they're unable to like communicate with each other or reach out to each other or comfort each other or touch each other. That's like a huge tension in Goodbye Dragon Inn. At what point will human beings finally like touch each other over the course of that movie? And I don't think they actually do over the course of the entire film. You see in the reverse shot the shot of her that shows the kitchen as well. How actually self-enclosed she is with the bureau and with the TV nestled in her living room, just like this little enclave she's made for herself. Tsai's a cool guy. He's like, you know, it's hard living in such close quarters. You'd think that would make you more familiar, more intimate with people. And in a way, it does. but in other ways it doesn't. It makes you intimate with the things about them that annoy you, the things about them that are intrusive or disruptive. That's a big part of Goodbye Dragon Inn as well, the ways in which patrons at a movie theater are annoying to other patrons. Much in the same way that if you're watching this movie and this is your first time watching The Hole, you'll find me annoying for talking over it. Which is why you should be watching this on your own first. It's got a lot of stuff in storage. Oh no, that's his shop. I see. There's also like castaway objects and like repeated, almost like duplicated objects in Goodbye Dragon Inn as well, with the peanuts on the floor. Yeah, and this is the actor who was in Goodbye Dragon Inn and also Dragon Inn. He was at the end of Goodbye Dragon Inn, and he's the lieutenant in Dragon Inn, the guy who works for the eunuch general. I forgot what his thing was. It's so cool to see an actor after so many generations, after so many decades, and still acting and still like in love with the medium and stuff. It's like seeing Jean-Louis Trintignant in Amour and Emmanuel Riva. That's so beautiful. It genuinely is. Like Grace Chang doing the music. This man was in Dragon Inn in 1967, and he's still doing movies with Tsai Ming-liang in 1997 and in 2003. Whether or not you're always in the position to appreciate it, that's love. That's somebody who loves the medium, and that's somebody who loves him, also putting him on the in the medium. That to me is something fundamentally different from like Star Wars or Indiana Jones. It's not recasting, like bringing back these old stars to try and capture an old magic, but really as like a financial incentive to bring back old viewers to make more money on a franchise and stuff. It's keeping the light alive of this tradition of film, and this history specifically of this Taiwanese tradition of film.
Mimi! Mimi!
This is like so warm to me. I know it's like cold and barren, and it's like not a lot of stuff happening, and they're being reined in and stuff, and it feels oppressive and isolating, but like these characters who like don't know how to communicate with each other, who don't know how to open up to each other, they in their own weird small ways show like attempts and passages at communication, at human connection, even if it's with a cat, even when it's with a hole. There's this really weird relationship Tsai Ming-liang has with like objects. I like, because there's a part of it in terms of the refuse, in terms of all the garbage, that's like, this is clearly a bad thing. This is a country or a city that's building on trash and consumerism and things that aren't necessary, that aren't useful, like the long expired cans in his shop. But it's also like there's also a certain kind of affection in it and sensitivity, or something like that, where these characters like find some sort of love or find some sort of fulfillment or satiation in these fucking objects that don't interact with them, that don't reply to them, but they have created this kind of relationship with these objects in the way that the characters create relationships with like the movies and Goodbye Dragon Inn. Like, the girl downstairs has created a relationship with her TV, or a relationship with her radio. And when the two humans actually try and form a relationship with each other, it's one of inconvenience or annoyance. He just keeps annoying her until perhaps she recognizes him, and it becomes a familiar relationship. It's a relationship even if it's an antagonistic relationship. This is the kind of movie I would make if I were making a movie about living in the city. It's almost like rom-com-ish, but in a much more severe and like stripped down way. But it's about how antagonism breeds familiarity. It's a really beautiful sentiment. I really love this. I'm guessing this is from Mambo Girl. Let's do Mambo Girl. I also really like this aspect of, I don't know how to describe it, but it's like this interaction with East Asian culture, with like Latin American culture, with like mambo and stuff. It's also prevalent in Wong Kar-wai's films, like especially in Days of Being Wild, that he like kind of loves Latin music. But it's a really interesting kind of interaction. It shows like internationalism or like cross-culturalism away from an American or even from a Western lens. It's so great because like the characters are so restrained and so unable to like vocalize this, and so we just carry it around in the musicals. It's an expression of all this kind of like sensuality, beauty, delight. That's not at all present in how the characters interact in the non-musical world. I wonder if it has to do with this kind of like, I don't know. I don't know, like I don't know Tsai Ming-liang well enough, or his work well enough to actually speak on it, but there's this kind of desire to or admiration for the past that's present in his movies, obviously in Dragon Inn, but also this fascination with Grace Chang and the Cathay films and that aesthetic, this moment or this generation of Taiwan that was perhaps more beautiful and more perfect. And while I think there is a kind of peace or understanding or comfort with the version of Taiwan that's present in his films in the here and now, there is certainly the nostalgia for the past. Maybe it's just me reading it wrong, but it doesn't feel apocalyptic to me. It feels like, you know, circumstances are bad, but human beings persevere regardless. They find a way to connect or understand or open themselves to each other. No, don't. I hate it. This is also in Goodbye Dragon Inn, and I just wasn't a fan of it there either. This is literally the story I would tell if I could tell a story about urban living, being in too close quarters with people that you will never directly interact with.
Hey, 你在干嘛？又喝醉了。
Humans behave so oddly. Doing anything they can to avoid direct communication. I could be completely off the wall and wrong in these interpretations, and feel free to disagree with me if you have a different take, but this like feels so instinctual to me. This feels like such a recognizable pattern of behavior that It almost felt like instant recognition in a time where human interaction, human communication is only transactional, or it's only geographic, where there's like no like feelings associated with interactions, or like there's no admission or honesty. The only form of admission or honesty is by being either as contrary, as aggressive as possible, or being as strange as possible. There's no way to reveal your feelings or your vulnerability to other people. You have to mask it in being angry at them or being weird with them. So there's this mania disease that's gripping people that are like under a pandemic and that are shielded and hidden away from each other. There's an affliction that is making them try and be confrontational with each other and direct with each other and try and spread that to each other. I mean, a similar story, it comes up in, is it Rabbit? No, Shivers, with the David Cronenberg movie, that there's a high-rise that's afflicted with like an alien invasion or a sickness, and it's like an incredibly like neoliberal high-rise for like rich and wealthy people, affluent people, and they have like really nice and really stratified interactions with each other, and the aliens, the Shivers, makes them incredibly horny and sexual with each other and go crazy with each other. And it's like a bad thing ostensibly, but it's also a thing that makes them actually admit to and confront their carnal impulses to each other. Is that kitten gonna die? Yeah, you gotta save the kitten. Screenwriting 101. These different things that human beings try and do to protect each other, or to protect themselves, to insulate themselves from each other, to hide from or obscure themselves from each other. And as the poet says, eventually they're going to be forced to crash into each other. I mean, it really reads differently in like 2023, but it's a very romantic take on a pandemic narrative. I mean, all pandemic narratives ultimately are about the risk of human connection in the face of isolation. I mean, that's really what The Painted Veil is about, isn't it? That's really what Camus is about, isn't it? It's so romantic. I don't know how else to say it. This is a beautiful movie. I'm dumbstruck. I'm like smiling this entire movie, grinning ear to ear. Just the refuse falling from the higher level, the upper levels. Like, truly, what a special filmmaker to tell a love story in these settings. What a special filmmaker. Yeah, see how that, like, spotlight or that flashlight really kind of, like, gives this weird horror tinge to this movie? I think it's a really good kind of contrast that the spotlight is the vehicle for a musical. It's a part of the mechanics and the language of a musical, but it's also, it feeds into the language of this being like a horror movie or an apocalyptic movie. This musical within this apartment complex is like, it's something that's very flashy and shiny and delightful in this like kind of like horrid or drab setting. And similarly, the pandemic and the trash crisis and the isolation is duly being used to express a story of human connection and warmth and and desire to identify with someone else. Yeah, they're still fumigating. Don't use that bathroom. Yeah, you remembered. Oh, God. That's weird. Was Synecdoche, New York quoting The Hole when it had Kate and Qatar pee in the sink? And it's really nice. Like, this, like, really small interaction, this disembodied interaction, she kind of recognizes that he's thinking about her, that he shows concern for her, and respects her wishes. And it's also, like, a carnal or a visceral act that's been, like, decoupled from actual interaction. So she's experiencing a physical sensation with him without actually being with him. She knows that if she's hearing that liquid going through those pipes, that he's using the bathroom, but she's like thinking about those aspects of his body without actually interacting with them. And again, in terms of the fetishes of this, the paraphilia of this, she's having, she's having phone sex. This is such a great pandemic movie. She's having phone sex with a partner on the phone, but whoever they are, they can't physicalize the relationship with her, and so she has to manifest it through her interaction with an object. This is a great pandemic movie. It really is about how people who are, like, self-enclosed interact with the world. Is she gonna need water from him? Water everywhere, not a drop to drink. I wonder if him... Oh, I see. That makes sense. And they're like performing the same actions as each other without recognizing it. They're in sync with each other. It's really, really cool. Tsai Ming-liang seems fascinated with like compartmentalized behavior and like the ways that people like are able to like communicate telepathically, like simultaneous movements, or how performing a function in one affects another. And just like the specific kind of like bond or relationship that's formed by people who aren't able to actually interact with each other. It's really romantic. What's the most depressing thing that you do in your life? You eat alone in your apartment. What's something you desperately wish to be eating with somebody else? What's something you're actually doing? You're actually eating with somebody else at the same time. You just didn't know it. Enormously fake sneeze. It's really hard to do, obviously. Just in that instance. It was really obvious. She's finally come. Or maybe it's the plumber. One will be the solution to all your problems. One will end your ability to relate to her. He's too afraid to answer the door. Because which one will it be? If it's the plumber, he'll never contact her again. If it's her, it would be amazing, but he doesn't want to risk the uncertainty. He'd rather have the relationship that he has now, which he feels is sustainable or he feels is familiar. I know you want to connect with this girl, but I think she's got other things going on, I guess. She's like busy right now. This is not to say anything about you. It's not that she finds you repulsive. I'm not saying she doesn't, but she just has other things on her mind right now. She's sick. She's sick. But when did this start? It would start with a sneeze, obviously. Okay. Maybe the leak is making her more sick, or it's making her more susceptible or more prone. So the leak is like how they connect with each other, how they relate to each other. It's how he's become more aware of her existence, and so he tries to push the leak a little bit more and more. But obviously being in the presence of all these leaks in her house is making her more susceptible to illness. Yeah. Yeah, I am getting kind of, Synecdoche, New York vibes from this. Like, I feel like Kaufman maybe gave this little glance over in terms of how both approach, like, a surreal way, but nonetheless, like, a literal way of approaching their themes by, like, literalizing them as interactable objects within the scope of the movie itself, like this constant rain or this constant leak in the hole or the house that's constantly on fire or smoking in Synecdoche, New York. So maybe it's her hoarding that's made her sick. Which is also, like, big 21st century vibes. This movie is literally about millennials. And the light again. I can fix her. Cockroach DF, Hammer DF. This is also what people's like look like in their own apartments. When you go on a Tinder date, this is what the person you're on a date with is hiding from you. That they're a trash person. So this is something that's like this is a dynamic or a relationship that I think is so beautifully realized again in Goodbye Dragon and with the story of the Baozi. Oh, wow. Strong guy. That's a cute little film. I enjoyed that. In the year 2000. Okay. We are grateful that, yes, indeed, that we still have Grace Chang's songs to comfort us. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. I like the little postscripts that he adds. I really enjoyed that. I feel like, I don't know, I really do feel like Charlie Kaufman must have like caught a peek at this movie at some point between this and like 2009. Yeah, I really enjoyed this. I think this was like infinite or like immediately relatable for me, but like living in an urban setting, kind of crammed into buildings with each other. This movie was like immediately recognizable, and I think that's interesting because in some ways I like think that this was really easy to like, but it didn't necessarily have as deep an impact on me as Goodbye Dragon Inn. And I'm not exactly saying that as a bad thing. I'm saying that as a commendable thing about Goodbye Dragon Inn, that it's such a special alchemic experience. But the part of what this movie being like very recognizable to me is what made it less like transformative for me, because I kind of like recognized like the behavior and the actions of everybody in it. It didn't like take me on as much of a journey as I feel like Goodbye Dragon Inn did, and where Goodbye Dragon Inn is like really withholding of the dynamics or the feelings it wishes to create, and eventually like reveals it over the course of it, or you reveal it by digging deeper and deeper into it. I think this was kind of like in its own way a little bit too explicit, and so a lot of my experience of the movie was nodding in agreement, saying, "Yes, that's true. I do recognize that," and that's not a bad thing. That's just me saying that my relationship with this movie was more simplistic than my relationship with Goodbye Dragon Inn. And I actually wonder if that's an issue with chronology. Like, if I just recognize the themes or what I interpret as the themes and the explorations of Tsai Ming-liang a little bit better after watching Goodbye Dragon Inn, and that's made this subsequent viewing feel a little bit more direct and a little bit more obvious. And so that's something I'm going to ponder when I watch his other movies. And in a way, that makes me feel grateful for seeing Goodbye Dragon Inn first, because it's just, it was like blowing open the doors on a completely new experience, a completely new sensation of watching a movie. One thing I'll say in terms of also something that I think is like more deeply and better explored in Goodbye Dragon Inn, is that there's like a degree of mystery to the relationship. There's mystery in this relationship too, in terms of it's like an unfamiliar dynamic for an audience, and it takes a little bit of a time to like kind of cotton on that it's a romance that's forming between these two, because it's manifested in such a strange way. But in terms of the dynamics of the relationship, I think it's actually pretty clear and pretty conventional, like what a rom-com is. And something I didn't like in this that I like a lot more in Goodbye Dragon Inn is that in this, the relationship feels asymmetrical to me. It feels like we are mostly in the upstairs neighbor's perspective, and how he views this desire, and how he views the woman downstairs. And the woman downstairs has some participation in this courtship, but largely she, for the second half, is put in a damsel in distress situation where she develops a cold, and she develops the like behaviors, the mannerisms of the virus, and it's up to him to save her. And that's just not a dynamic that's present in Goodbye Dragon Inn. Goodbye Dragon Inn like sits in the mystery of it, the mysteries of trying to like cruise or pick up guys in a movie theater, in the case of the main character, and in the case of the projectionist and the house manager, the ticket taker. It's like wonderfully equal between them. They're like both participating in it, and they're both like chasing each other and running away from each other, and there's such a delight in the way that they interact with each other. It's it's a beautiful, it's an incredible like dance that they're doing with each other without ever being in each other's presence. And that's such a profound element to Goodbye Dragon, and that I've never seen in another movie. It's like the beautiful version of was it Dear John? I'm trying to figure out what the fucking Amanda Seyfried movie is. Just like this is like the beautifully realized version of that dynamic in Friends. Yeah, this was a great film though. I don't mean to denigrate this film. I'm just want to speak about how profound and transformational and singular Goodbye Dragon Inn feels to me. Oh, also generally, I'll take another look over at the reviews for this, but I kind of like naturally disagree with the tone that's being set with a lot of these. That they're describing it as like eerie and odd and apocalyptic, and desperation certainly is not something that I would necessarily agree with. I think while the elements are there, I think that could lead you to those conclusions. I think those are the wrong takeaways from these movies. And this is again just like speaking from my point of view. But like those words, those the connotations of those words make it sound like he's making his version of like a David Lynch film, something that's like desperate and mechanical and oppressive. And that's from the beginning, I would say that's I should hope that's not your takeaway or your experience of this movie. That I think what's being communicated, at least for me, what's being communicated in Tsai Ming-liang's films is like very, very trashy conditions, but it's an incredibly optimistic outlook on human life. The human desire for connection, for affection, for physical contact. I don't view this as like these are people at the end of the world suffering enormously and a story of the last gasps of their humanity as this chapter of the world closes in on itself. Like this is not these movies do not strike me as catastrophic. I think they're enormously optimistic in embracing the vagaries of human contact, and while they look back to a time of more open and more exposed human connection, the connection of Goodbye, the connection of Dragon Inn, or the connection of Grace Chang, there's I think there's an incredible fascination with the unspoken and the untouched in these movies. And so I don't want to give you the sense, I want to push back on these reviewers that describe these movies as dark or twisted or apocalyptic or suspicious in any way. I don't think that there's an air of suspicion in Tsai Ming-liang's films. I think there's curiosity in Tsai Ming-liang's films. And that's really my takeaway. My big message at the end of this is that I'm going to watch more Tsai Ming-liang films. He's a wonderfully individualized filmmaker. He's unlike most other filmmakers that I've seen, and I just love his romantic disposition that he manages to infuse in these stories that are about concrete and about rain and about buildings, a story of love. Yeah, that was the whole. You should really check it out. Go watch it right now, and let me know what you think. In the meantime, don't forget to click the like button and subscribe for more old, obscure, and art house films. Check out some Grace Chang films, and if you can't find them, I'll help you out with another video. And until next time, keep watching good movies.